Good evening. It's May 16th, and these are our Hossinator and black Brandywine tomato plants in these 25-gallon containers that's filled with Miracle Grow potting mix. This is our first year down here in Mississippi, so we had to start our stuff in containers. We'll do a little walkthrough here, and you can see that the plants are starting to put on their blooms. And we've got some tomatoes, some down low. A lot of blooms at the top. And now that they're starting to bloom out at the top here, we're going to go ahead and get these guys fertilized. Now, we've got a video on the channel of when we planted these plants in these containers, and all we used was Miracle Grow potting mix. It took two cubic foot bags of Miracle Grow potting mix to fill these containers. And then to that, we added like a tablespoon of bone meal and a tablespoon of gypsum into the soil. You see the blooms there. They're starting to come out now. Really nice. And we've got some good tomatoes down there. That's what we did for fertilizing. Now, that was organic nutrients already mixed in with the Miracle Grow potting mix that says on the bag it feeds for 6 months, but I don't know about all that when you're growing tomato plants in there that take a lot of nutrients. But what we're going to do today is go ahead and fertilize for the first time these plants that are starting to put the blooms on with we're using Schultz, but it's basically the same thing as Miracle Grow. When we planted these plants, we put the organic nutrients with the synthetic fertilizer already in the Miracle Grow in the pots, and then I top dressed with some pine needles as a mulch. I just raked them up over there in the forest and used that as a mulch on top, and then I raked that back, and about 3 weeks ago I put like a tablespoon of bone meal on top of each plant and a tablespoon of gypsum, and that's really all the fertilizer these plants have had. But now, with the blooms coming out, and we've hit 90-degree weather this week, we're in the high 90s today. It's probably 95 to 100, depending on where you are down here in southern Mississippi. We had about, I don't know, a week and a half of rain last week, so I didn't even water these guys for a week. But now it's getting the 90s this week, and we're going to have to start watering. So we're going to go ahead and lightly fertilize these plants with some Bloom Plus, because we've got a lot of green vegetative growth, and I don't want to use Miracle Grow because I'm trying to grow tomatoes, not tomato leaves. So if you want to grow tomatoes, you need to cut back on the nitrogen on your tomato plants, because you can grow beautiful lush green plants, but if you don't get any tomatoes off of them, what's the use? So we're going to start with our Bloom Plus. Like I say, this is basically a knockoff of Miracle Grow. And let me see if I can show you what it says on the back. It says blooming plants, trees, and shrubs, 1 teaspoon per gallon. Outdoor blooming potted plants, half a teaspoon per gallon. Indoor blooming potted plants, 1/4 teaspoon per gallon. So I think what we're going to do, since these plants are in pots and they're outdoors, we're going to go with the smallest recommendation. We're going to start with probably quarter teaspoon per gallon of water, because this is the first time these plants will be fertilized with this synthetic water-soluble fertilizer. And we would rather do a mild fertilizing than a heavy fertilizing, because we don't want to burn up these plants because they're not used to that. And this is our first time, so it's easier to do less than more, because we can always add more, but we can't take it out if we've overdone it. So we've got 2 5-gallon buckets of rainwater here, and to that I'm gonna add 5 quarter teaspoons to each bucket, and we're going to probably put around a gallon of water on these guys now that we're getting the 90s and these plants are really drinking up the water. Up until now, when I was watering, it was like a half a gallon every 2 days or 3 days, but now this morning we got up and it was hot and humid here and the plants were a little wilty, so we put about, I don't know, close to a half a gallon on them, and now we're going to put a full gallon on them. We don't want to over amp them and make tomatoes start splitting, so we're going to go ahead and do 1 gallon of water per plant with a quarter teaspoon of Miracle Grow, and then we'll do that probably once a week depending on what they look, and maybe even once every 2 weeks, but we'll keep you updated now that we're starting our fertilization on these plants with the synthetic water-soluble fertilizer. So let me pause this video and I'll show you what we're going to do. Okay, we're back. There went a little bit in there, so we'll just count that as one of the, maybe not, it wasn't that much. So what we're going to do is I've got some measuring spoons here, and we're just going to do a quarter teaspoon per gallon. There's 5 gallons of water in the buckets. I know because I filled that bucket, that milk jug up, that 1 gallon milk jug 5 times to put that water in there. So here's 1. There's 2. 3. 4. 5. 1. 2. 3. 4. 5. And that's it. We're going to start off small, and we're going to build these plants up to probably the recommended dosage on here, along with adding some compost tea every 2 or 3 waterings. Last week I did mix up a 5-gallon bucket of compost tea. I just went in the back in our compost pile, took a handful of compost and put in a 5-gallon bucket, and I took a half a tablespoon of bone meal and a half a tablespoon of fish emulsion, and I just put in there and stirred it up, let it sit for 2 days, and I put probably, I don't know, half a gallon on each plant. But that's really the only fertilizing these plants have got. But this is the first of the synthetic fertilizer. So we're going to see if we can get these blooms to start coming out real heavy to load these plants up with some tomatoes. So let me stir that up. I'll just use a little stick here. Now I've got a little calendar in there on our refrigerator. So what I'm going to do is after I get done, I'm going to write down the day's date and just put like a quarter strength. And then in 2 weeks times, when I use this stuff again, or maybe a week, depending on how they look, we'll probably do another quarter strength. And after that, we may get up to a half a teaspoon instead of a quarter teaspoon per gallon. But we like to start off slow and small on the dosages with synthetic fertilizers so we don't burn up our plants, especially when we're starting to hit the 90s down here. And I'll just take about a gallon jug. And there's one. Let me see if I can turn you around here. And we'll start over here with the Hossinator. We'll give it a second. And there's 1 gallon on there. Now we'll move over here to the black Brandywine. There we go. Okay. So then we'll go to this guy. Set for a second. Okay. Now those 2 are done. We've got 4 more over here to do. Let me see if I can pause this and move the camera. And I also want to say it's about 6 o'clock this evening and the sun's starting to go down. So we try not to water in the middle of the day. Sometimes you just have to when your plants are showing some stress and wilting down pretty hard. We're already seeing down here with the high temperature swings that we're getting that we got to stay on top of this. If we come out in the morning and our plants are a little wilty, we'll put a little water on these guys. And then we try to do it in the evenings and not in the middle of the day. But if you have to in the middle of the day, you just have to. We've had to do that back home, but we're trying not to do that here. We don't have drip irrigation and timers and all of that, but we just try to stay on top of it best we can. But now that the 90s are hitting down here, we're seeing that we're going to have to water twice as much as what we've been watering. So let me get some more stuff and we'll just pour on these plants. Let's see if we're going. Okay, so that should take care of all of those plants. I am going to put a little bit on these giant Marconi pepper plants too, and go ahead and give them a gallon each. And we'll really have to stay on top of watering down here. Like I said, we really, back home, in Indiana, we didn't hit 90s till about August. And we're already hitting them down here, and we're mid-90s, and we're getting a week of it with no rain. So it's going to be staying on top of these plants, monitoring the watering. Some people say you should water your containers until water comes out of the bottom. Well, these are 25-gallon containers each, and I've got 8 of them. You know, I'm not trying to mix up that much fertilizer. We'll put enough on these plants that if we need to add more water, we'll just add another half a gallon to a gallon of water. We're not trying to overdo it because I don't want to create root rot in these containers. Our plants back home that were just beautiful plants. If you haven't seen the videos of the Hossinator tomato plants we grew back in Indiana, you should really check those videos out. We have a playlist on our channel that's Hossinator playlist from 2024. It's from starting the seeds all the way up to getting them in the ground to harvest. And back home in the ground, we was getting maybe 40 to 50 tomatoes per plant. Seeing is believing. Go check the videos out. You don't have to believe what I'm telling you, and you'll see what I'm talking about. But we're doing things totally new and different down here because we've only been here 4 months, and we're trying to get some kind of garden going on with trying to renovate the new home we just bought. And we got a lot going on, and trying to keep this garden going in the extreme environments we've been experiencing down here with torrential downpours and rains for a week at a time, and then 90s immediately after that with no rain. We're learning it. This is all new to us. So it's going to take some time. It may take several years before we get it figured out, but we're here and we're willing to put the time in and get our hands in the dirt and try to provide a little bit of homegrown, to the best of our ability, vegetables and fruits that we don't have to rely on the markets every time we need something. This is how we do it. This may not work for you. I've said in many of my videos, gardening's not a one-size-fits-all. We're all in different climate zones. We're all in different areas of the country. We went from in-ground to now in pots. Hopefully we'll be able to get in-ground one of these days down here, but that's not happening this year. So we'll keep you updated on every time we water and what these plants look like. We're going to start off small with minimal water-soluble synthetic fertilizers in these pots, and maybe along the line top dressing with some gypsum and some bone meal, and maybe even calcium nitrate if we see any blossom end rot to help with the calcium deficiency. I'm sure we're going to get that in these containers, and we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But this is how we do it. Starting out down here, it's all trial and error, and we'll keep you updated in future videos when we fertilize again. Thanks for watching.